Today we're going to be unboxing the brand new Apple iPad Pro M4. Now, it's been a while since Apple's last major update to the iPad line, so I'm really excited to check this out, particularly the new OLED display as well as that super slim design, but this does come at a price, but more on that later. This video we're going to be unboxing the iPad, taking a look at what is new, and also do a brief side-by-side comparison to last year's iPad Pro M2 model. So without further ado, let's get started with the unboxing. All right, so we'll move the Apple Pencil off to the side here. We'll take a look at that later. Now, in terms of the price, the iPad Pro now starts at $999 or 999 pounds, and that is a major jump up compared to last year. In fact, that is a $200 increase, which is very significant, and I think definitely will impact whether this product is worth it or not for some. Now, the good thing is though, that we do this time start with 256 gigabytes. I think that is the least they can offer for that price, but is of course a much better starting point than the previous 128 gigabytes. All right, so here we go. Let's take a look, lift it up. Okay, so weight-wise, actually doesn't feel that much different compared to my previous iPad, but we'll take a look at that in more detail in a sec. And already it's looking very slim. Let's go ahead and pull off this paper wrapper here. Here we go, 3, 2, 1. And there we go. Look at that beautiful color. So it comes in two colors. We have silver as well as space black. And as you can see, I obviously chose the silver model. No, I really like the space black. I think particularly on the iPad somehow, the darker color looks especially great. And this appears to be a little bit darker compared to last year, which I think is kind of cool. So far, so good. I also wonder if it has the anti-fingerprint coating that Apple puts on their latest MacBooks. I'm not sure if it does, but so far, seems to be okay, but we'll take a look at that more in a sec. So let's put that off to the side here and see what else we get included inside the box. So here we have designed by Apple in California, as usual. And let's take a look at the paperwork. There we go. Also quite a lot of paperwork actually. Normally Apple, wow, a lot of these actually. That's interesting. Let's see, these are probably just different languages. I wonder why they give so many. Let's see, this is probably the English version. Yep, that is English. Let's see what else we have. That looks like, oh, that looks like Dutch, so I can actually read that, of course. And then we probably also have French and a myriad of other languages. That's probably because I have the European version or the UK version. I don't know if you'll get this many in the US as well. The same thing goes for the warranty cards. So quite a lot of paperwork from a company that is all about being green. Anyway, let's put that off to the side. And last but certainly not least, we have the USB-C cable. Now, this cable right away, I can tell is braided, so definitely a nice touch there. I've actually never had an all black USB-C cable, so let's go and take this off here. There we go. Let's see how long this cable is as well. Okay, so lengthwise, I would say it's just about the usual for Apple's cable. So I don't know, maybe 2.5 feet, maybe 90 or so, 80 centimeters, something like that. So we got a nice little matte connector here on either end. USB-C port, and then of course that nice braided cable, which doesn't tie as often, and I think is also more durable, so that's definitely a good step up, considering Apple's cables in the past haven't always been the most durable, so this is a very welcome change. Now, I did notice that there's actually no charge brick in the box, which honestly was kind of surprising. This was a very thin box. I was already thinking, how did they possibly squeeze this in there? But for a product that is $1,000, and also that is not a smartphone, like I can understand Apple not including the charge brick with, say, your iPhone, but for the iPad, I think there'll still be many new customers coming to the iPad who may not yet have a charger specifically for this device. Kind of like a MacBook. I will always expect a charge brick with a MacBook. I kind of expected the same from the iPad, but let me know your thoughts on this in the comments. All right, so let's go ahead and boot up the iPad and take a look at what is new. But quickly, while this boots up, I also want to quickly unbox the new Apple Pencil Pro. Whoever thought there'd be a professional pencil. I do really like the artwork on the box here. I think this is really neat. They have a few different designs. I got the black and white one here. Nice touch. Let's go ahead and open this here, pull off the tab. Voila, there we go. And let's unbox. So here we go, designed by Apple in California, once again, or still, I should say. And then we have the paperwork. So not as many copies this time. In fact, very minimal paperwork, just a, well, literally one page showing you how to attach the pencil. All right, and then we have the pencil itself. So here it is wrapped in this little paper wrapping. There we go, very elegant. And here it is. So basically looks very similar to all the previous Apple Pencils. I would say the big difference here will be the little Pencil Pro marking on the top here. And of course, the inside of this Apple Pencil definitely has some pretty major upgrades. We'll talk about that more in a sec. But here we go. Just a quick first look at the pencil. Let's go back to the iPad and see what is new. So here is the iPad booted up now, and there we go. Hello screen, always very familiar on the iPads. So one of the big upgrades with this new model specifically is going to be that new design. So there's quite a few changes here. First of all is the fact that it now actually does come in 2 screen sizes. So we get the 11-inch model, which is the one I have here, and it also comes in a larger 13-inch model. Now, personally, I've never had a 13-inch iPad. If you have one, I'd love to hear from you what your experience is using that. For me, that comes just a little bit too close to the size of my MacBook Air, which is sort of my on-the-go computer. So for me, the 11-inch version is sort of that perfect sweet spot between the smartphone display and then my MacBook Air's display. So I think this really is the way to go. Now, what is also really new with this model is just how incredibly thin it is, and just looking at it, it is paper thin. This is in fact Apple's thinnest product ever. So it comes in at just 5.3 millimeters thin. That is for the 11-inch model, and then the 13-inch model is going to be even thinner. Now, in terms of the weight, it comes in at 0.98 pounds, basically 1 pound, which is a really nice weight. I think you can comfortably hold it with one hand for several hours at a time, and you're never going to feel it, say, resting on your lap or something. That definitely makes the iPad a very comfortable product to use, and having it be even thinner now, I think only adds to that, especially if you're going to be adding accessories like, say, keyboards or folios. It's going to be very hard to notice this one in your bag. Now on this channel, I don't really like to break my products, but I am curious to see what the structural integrity of the new iPad Pro is like, because of course, it being thinner does mean that, well, it will be easier to bend. However, Apple does have some additional elements of structure inside, which in theory should make it more durable, or if not just as durable as the last model. And what I can tell here is, if I do some very light flexing without breaking it, I do intend to use this here. I can see that there's a little bit of movement, but to be honest, so far it doesn't feel any more flimsy, or rather less rigid compared to last year's iPad Pro. So I wouldn't consider this to be a major concern. Now, the next big upgrade is going to be the display. Now, for the first time, we have an OLED display on the iPad, which is really great to see, and I definitely welcome this. I love having the OLED display, of course, on my iPhone. Of course, this gives you really dark blacks, really vibrant colors. You can already kind of see this here on this display now. And Apple sort of achieved this by using 2 OLED displays, so it's kind of layered the 2 panels on top of each other or in tandem, and this also allows for very high brightness. So in fact, the iPad Pro now can go at up to 1000 nits of brightness, or up to 1600 nits of brightness in HDR. And this means that when you're using your iPad outside, it should be really great for visibility, and also things like reflections aren't going to disrupt your content as much. Speaking of reflections, the iPad Pro can now also be bought in a matte glass option. Now, this does only apply to the higher end storage models, and does also cost an additional $100. So it definitely comes at a price, but the matte option can be great for those Apple Pencil users, because it gives more of a matte textured feel, which more closely resembles, say, paper than a sheet of glossy glass like we get here on this iPad Pro. And then on the inside, we get Apple's M4 chip. Now, this is the first time that Apple's introduced an M series chip on the iPad. In fact, the iPad Pro is the first to get the M4 chip prior to any Mac getting it, which is really interesting to see. And I think it's quite a statement from Apple. And this is also going to be a big jump up from last year's M2 chip. There was never an M3 iPad, so we're going straight from the M2 now to the M4. Now, what does this mean? Well, compared to the M2, it should be around 50% faster in CPU performance and around 4 times faster in GPU performance. This is according to Apple, but of course I will be doing very thorough testing of both of these statistics, but ultimately this should give you a pretty good boost in performance, and this particular processor will come with 4 performance cores as well as 6 efficiency cores. Now, one thing I've definitely been thinking about with this iPad Pro is the battery life. Now, Apple does say that the M4 chip is not only more powerful, but also more power efficient, and therefore should result in similar battery compared to the previous iPad Pro with the M2 chip, despite having, well, less battery. That's part of the reason why they're able to make it as thin as this. So I do hope this does cancel out, because I really enjoy the battery life on the previous iPad Pro. For me, this is a big reason why I enjoy this product so much, and actually take it with me while traveling, like in a long flight, for example. It's very hard to completely deplete the battery in one sitting, and I hope this will be no different on the iPad Pro M4. And then flipping it over back to the front here, another big difference is going to be the positioning of the front camera. So on most recent iPads, this will be up here in the top center. This is now shifted over to the right, as when you hold your iPad in landscape mode, which I think is where most people use the iPad, especially during video calls, it will now be in a much more natural position. So this way, when you are speaking with someone, you're sort of looking just below the camera as opposed to looking off to the side. I don't know if you've ever experienced this on FaceTime, but it's always a bit awkward speaking with someone when you're calling with them on the iPad. It's a little bit like they're looking just off to the side while they're talking to you, kind of like what I'm doing here. And it's much nicer to have the camera aligned more with the center of where you are looking. So this is a big upgrade, and of course it still retains that Face ID functionality. You can see here, if I angle it into the light here, you can see all those sensors underneath as well. And we also get a microphone. We also get a microphone up here, and let's see, was there, yep, one on the side, and then of course one on the back. So we now get 4 microphones on this iPad. And then taking a closer look at the back, you'll see the camera module is going to be a little bit different. So first, we actually, it's actually a slight downgrade. So instead of having 2 lenses, we now just have 1 lens. So we lose the ultra wide lens, and now we just have a single 12 megapixel wide lens. Now, personally, I've probably used the back camera on my iPad maybe twice, no more than that. So I don't miss it at all. In fact, I think this is great to just have one camera and make that camera as good as possible rather than having multiple lenses, especially on an iPad, which really shouldn't be used as a camera anyway. Maybe only to show like the other angle while you're on a FaceTime call. That's what I would do. Or for document scanning. And Apple have actually made this better with an updated flash, which should now allow for much more accurate document scanning on your iPad. Right, let's take a closer look at this Apple Pencil. So the Apple Pencil still attaches magnetically like this, as I love this feature so much on the iPad. It makes it so easy to pair your Apple Pencil and also to charge it, right? When it's magnetically connected like this, it's also going to be charging, so it's very difficult to lose. It's in a very natural position, and it's quite impressive that Apple managed to keep this mechanism despite also having the camera up here and those Face ID sensors. So really great to see, and it's magnetic, so really easy to align. You can actually use it both ways as well. Super great. And what's new specifically with this new Apple Pencil Pro, while it may look very similar on the outside, in fact it does actually have some new features. So first of all, we do get some new sensors here on the front of the pencil, which will allow you to squeeze it to access, oh, actually, interesting, yeah, I just squeezed it and I can feel a little bit of feedback, and that's actually one of the new features with this pencil, and that is a little taptic engine, or taptic motor that's going to be here in the top of the pencil, and that sort of gives you a clicky sensation without actually pressing any buttons. So really cool. You even get it here on the top. If I'm pressing the top here, I can sort of feel it vibrate. So nice little touch, and goes a long way to making this pencil feel more tactile and, well, more like a pencil. Another feature that this new Apple Pencil has is it will have the gyroscope, and this will allow you to angle the pencil to then change the brush size, as well as changing the angle of the brush. You can get a more thin stroke or a broader stroke. So for you artists out there, this may be a useful feature, but I think what's really useful most of all is going to be that squeeze feature to quickly access menus while you're using your pencil. Oh, and it's also worth noting that this pencil does actually work with the new iPad Air, however, will not work with the previous iPad Pro. So that's something to bear in mind. Now, another new accessory that we are getting for the iPad Pro is going to be a new Magic Keyboard. I don't have mine just yet, but I do have a video on that coming. I was very interested in seeing what the new upgrades are like as last year's model. I did review this, and you may recall if you've seen that video, I wasn't all too positive on that product. So I'm very curious to see what the upgraded or the new version of that brings, because there are some of my concerns I know have been addressed, others haven't, so I'm very interested to sort of revisit that and see if I change my recommendation or not. So be sure to subscribe to not miss that video. All right, so I've now got both iPads here side by side to do a brief comparison. So we have the new iPad Pro M4 as well as last year's iPad Pro M2. And like I suspected at the start of the video, you can see that the shades of space gray or space black used are actually quite different. So the newer model is substantially darker compared to the previous model. In fact, in this angle, it almost looks like this is silver and this is space gray. But it's definitely a big difference there in the shade of color used. We can also look at the camera modules here and see that there's a previously, there was a small sheet of glass on the older iPad that sort of separated the two lenses, whereas now that has been removed, probably in the name of thinness. So I think it actually makes the whole design look a little bit more uniform, so quite nice. Although I would love to see Apple eliminate the camera bump entirely. Looking at the sides here, this is of course where we get the biggest difference between the two, and this is where Apple's thinnest ever product really comes to shine, and you can see there's a substantial difference between these two tablets. Now, I know from a distance it may look like we're going from thin to even thinner, and that is true, but when you're holding the two products, I must say the even thinner design of the new iPad Pro does feel super nice to hold. And I hate to say it, but it feels a little bit magical knowing that there is an entire computer packed inside of this thin sheet of glass and aluminum, and of course also the battery and the new incredible OLED display. Now, speaking of the front, let's go ahead and put the two next to each other here. I'm really going to be looking at the bezels as I'm curious to see if there's any difference. And if I look at the two side by side, it does appear that the bezels on the newer iPad are ever so slightly thinner than on the previous iPad Pro, and this I think is great. I think the bezels, while they are a little bit necessary on the iPad as it does give you something to grip onto, they don't have to be as thick as they are, and I think having slimmer bezels makes the whole product look and feel extra modern. So let me go ahead and bring the two a little bit closer here so you can see. So the new one here will be on the right, and then the previous generation is on the left. So you can see there's a little bit of a difference. It's not that much, but there's still some difference in the bezel size between the two. And holding the two iPads here against each other, the dimensions are actually a little bit different as well. So the newer iPad, so that's the one here on the right, is going to be a little bit taller by about 2 millimeters or so, and it is a little bit narrower as well. So definitely slight changes in the dimensions, nothing you're really gonna notice too much other than the thinness. I think that is definitely something that I immediately notice, and I think we'll definitely appreciate when using the iPad, you know, when you're holding it with one hand and then using the other hand to sort of navigate around the display. Now I also want to briefly touch on the weight, so let me lift them one by one here. Okay, so weight-wise, I don't really feel any difference. I'm going to put the specs on screen, but I would say they are very similar. So I think both very comfortable to hold and use with one hand for an extended period of time. So I would say the biggest differences between last year's iPad Pro M2 and this year's iPad Pro M4 are going to be that new OLED display, that even thinner design, the new orientation of the camera, and of course its compatibility with other accessories or new accessories such as this Apple Pencil Pro. And then finally will be that new M4 chip inside for even better performance for many years to come. So these I would say are the main upgrades, or rather differences, between the two models. So I'm really excited to switch to and to start using this new iPad Pro M4. Let me know in the comments if there's anything in particular you'd like me to cover in my upcoming review video, or if there's any comparisons you'd like me to do. For example, to say a more thorough comparison to last year's iPad Pro M2 or the iPad 10 or even the iPad Air to sort of see which is best to buy depending on your use case. So definitely let me know any questions you may have in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend you check out my iPad First Things to Do video to unlock the full potential of this powerful machine. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.